Hey there, bookworms and knowledge seekers. Welcome back to Wealth of Words, your one-stop shop for mind-blowing book discussions. I'm your host, Richard, serving up that smooth, late-night radio vibe to make these deep thoughts go down easy.
And I'm Isabella, ready to unpack some serious ideas with you today.
That's right, folks. Tonight, we're cracking open The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. Buckle up, because this book is going to take us on a wild ride through the unpredictable world of, well, Black Swan events.
Makes it sound a bit ominous, but he's not wrong. The Black Swan really challenges our assumptions about how the world works.
Because let's be real, we like to think we have things figured out. We make plans, we set goals, and then bam, some totally random event throws everything off course. Kind of like that time I bet my entire savings on a pigeon race.
Okay.
Let's just say the pigeons had other plans.
Okay.
Sure.
Maybe not exactly like that. But you are touching on the very essence of what Taleb calls a Black Swan event. These are those rare, high-impact occurrences that completely blindside us.
The kind of events that make you want to scream, what just happened?
Exactly. And according to Taleb, these events have three key characteristics. First, they're rare, meaning they fall outside the realm of what we normally expect. Second, they have an extreme impact, shaking things up on a large scale. And third, they exhibit what he calls retrospective predictability.
Retrospective predictability. It sounds like a fancy way of saying hindsight is 20/20.
You got it. It's like after something crazy happens, everyone suddenly becomes an expert explaining why it was bound to happen all along.
Oh, you mean like when that friend who never cracks a book aces the exam and says, oh yeah, I just skimmed the chapter last night. Sure you did.
That's a perfect example. Taleb calls this tendency to create narratives around random events the narrative fallacy.
Yeah.
We love stories, so we try to fit these messy, unpredictable occurrences into neat little explanations.
Because admitting that we have no clue why things happen is just not as satisfying, right?
Well, it can be unsettling for sure, but recognizing the narrative fallacy is crucial for understanding how we often misinterpret the world around us.
So besides our love for a good story, why else do we miss these black swans coming? Or are we just oblivious walking around with blinders on?
Well, there's another culprit at play here called confirmation bias. This is our tendency to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs, even if those beliefs are wrong. It's like we have these mental filters that block out anything that challenges our worldview.
Okay, I'm guilty of this one, especially when it comes to online debates. Let's be honest. You see an article that supports your opinion and you're like, see, I knew I was right all along.
We all do it. But the key takeaway here is to be aware of this bias and actively seek out information that challenges your assumptions. It might feel uncomfortable, but that's how you grow and learn. So listeners, I challenge you to step outside your echo chambers and explore different perspectives.
Consider that your homework assignment for the week, folks. Now, if we're so bad at predicting these black swans, is there even a port in trying? Are we just doomed to be constantly surprised by life?
That's where Taleb's concept of Mediocristan and Extremistan comes in. He uses these terms to describe two different domains of randomness.
Hold on, countries of randomness. Are we talking about some secret society of chaos enthusiasts here?
Not quite, although that does sound like an interesting group. Mediocristan represents the realm of predictable events with mild variations. Think about things like human height or the results of flipping a coin. You can use averages and statistical models to make pretty accurate predictions in this domain.
Got it. So Mediocristan is where things are pretty straightforward and predictable. What about Extremistan?
Extremistan, on the other hand, is where things get wild. It's the world of unpredictable outcomes where a single event can completely disrupt the norm. The stock market, for example, or the success of a new product.
Ooh. And let's not forget the impact of a certain global pandemic. That definitely sent us on a roller coaster ride into Extremistan.
Exactly. The problem is we often use the wrong tools to try and predict things in Extremistan. It's like using the average height of a group of people to guess how tall the tallest person in the world is.
Okay, I see the flaw in that logic.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate this wild and unpredictable world of Extremistan then?
Well, that's where we get to one of the most fascinating concepts in the book, antifragility. Taleb argues that instead of just surviving randomness, some things actually benefit from it. They get stronger because of the chaos.
Antifragility. Sounds like something out of a superhero comic.
It's a pretty powerful idea, actually. Think about a forest fire. It might seem destructive, but it's actually essential for the long-term health of the ecosystem.
So it's like a natural reset button, clearing out the old to make way for the new.
Exactly. And that's something we can apply to our own lives as well. Instead of fearing failure or setbacks, we can view them as opportunities for growth and learning.
It's good stuff. It's like a whole new way of looking at risk and resilience. But before we go any further down this rabbit hole, let's take a quick pause. Don't touch that dial, folks. We'll be right back with more mind-bending insights from the Black Swan.
And remember, we love hearing from you, so hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment with your thoughts so far. What resonated with you? What are your burning questions? Let's keep this conversation going.
Welcome back to Wealth of Words, where we're delving into the fascinating and sometimes unsettling world of the Black Swan.
And we're back, folks, still buzzing from all this talk about antifragility. Makes you wonder what other hidden strengths we might have lurking within, right?
It's certainly a thought-provoking concept, but before we get too carried away with our newfound resilience, let's talk about something else Taleb highlights: the problem of silent evidence.
Silent evidence. Now that sounds mysterious. Is this like some secret code only Black Swan enthusiasts know about?
Not quite as clandestine as all that. Think of it this way. History tends to focus on the winners, the success stories, the ones who made it big. But what about all the others who tried and failed? Their stories often go untold. It's like we only see the tip of the iceberg, right? We hear about the Steve Jobs and Elon Musks of the world, but what about all the brilliant minds who took similar risks and didn't quite reach those heights?
Precisely. We tend to forget that success is often built on a foundation of unseen failures. For every groundbreaking invention or wildly successful business, there are countless others that never saw the light of day.
So how do we account for this silent evidence when we're trying to understand the world? It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
It's about recognizing that our perception of reality is often skewed. We see the successes and assume that's the norm, but we're missing a huge part of the picture.
Makes you wonder how many brilliant ideas have been discarded or overlooked simply because they didn't fit the narrative of success.
It's a sobering thought for sure, but being aware of silent evidence can help us make more informed decisions and avoid falling into the trap of survivorship bias.
Survivorship bias. Okay, now you're just throwing jargon at me.
It's just a fancy way of saying we tend to focus on the survivors, the successes, and overlook the failures. It's like if you only interviewed lottery winners about their strategies, you'd get a very distorted view of the odds of winning.
Ah, so it's about looking beyond the obvious, considering the full spectrum of possibilities, both the successes and the failures. Sounds like a good life lesson in general.
Indeed it is. So how do we actually apply all this Black Swan thinking to our lives?
Yeah.
It's one thing to understand the concepts, but how do we use them to make better decisions?
That's the million-dollar question. We've talked about the unpredictable nature of the world, the biases that cloud our judgment, and the importance of embracing uncertainty. But what are some practical steps we can take to navigate this chaotic landscape?
Well, Taleb offers a few strategies. One of them is what he calls the barbell strategy. It involves combining extreme risk with extreme safety.
Barbell strategy. Sounds like something you'd hear from a personal trainer, not a philosopher.
It's actually a pretty brilliant concept. Imagine you take 90% of your savings and put it in something ultra safe, like government bonds. That's one end of your barbell.
Okay, that sounds pretty boring. Where's the excitement in that?
But then you take the remaining 10% and invest it in something high risk, high reward, maybe a promising startup or a speculative investment. That's the other end of your barbell.
Ah, so it's like hedging your bets, playing it safe with most of your resources while still leaving room for potential big wins. Sounds like a smart approach in a world where anything can happen.
Exactly. The barbell strategy helps you balance stability with the potential for exponential growth. It's about recognizing that you can't predict the future, so you need to be prepared for a range of outcomes.
So it's like having a safety net while still allowing yourself to swing for the fences. I like it. But what about those unexpected events that we can't really plan for? The curveballs life throws our way that knock us completely off balance.
That's where the importance of preparing for the unexpected comes in. Whether it's your personal finances, your career, or your health, you need to build systems that can handle shocks.
So like having an emergency fund, keeping your skills sharp, and maybe stocking up on some extra toilet paper just in case.
Exactly. It's about being proactive and having a plan B, even if you don't know what kind of curveball is headed your way.
Makes sense. But all this talk about black swans and uncertainty is making my head spin a little. How do we stay sane in a world where anything can happen? I'm starting to feel like I need a vacation to Mediocristan.
Well, that's where Taleb's final piece of advice comes in. Stay curious. He draws inspiration from Umberto Eco's concept of the anti-library.
An anti-library, is that like a library filled with books you've already read?
Quite the opposite, actually. Eco believed that the most valuable part of a library wasn't the books you've already read, but the books you haven't read yet. It's about valuing what you don't know even more than what you do.
So it's like embracing the unknown, constantly seeking out new knowledge and perspectives. Sounds like a recipe for lifelong learning.
Precisely. Curiosity is the key to staying adaptable and open to new possibilities. It's what allows us to see the world with fresh eyes and potentially even spot those black swans before they hit us.
Now that's a superpower I can get behind.
Ah.
And speaking of superpowers, it's time for us to recharge our batteries and prepare for the grand finale.
Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back with more insights from the Black Swan and some final thoughts to leave you pondering.
And we're back for the final chapter of our Wealth of Words exploration of the Black Swan. You folks ready to wrap our heads around some final takeaways?
Ready to synthesize all these thought-provoking ideas.
So if we had to boil down the Black Swan to its essence, what would you say is the main message Taleb is trying to get across?
Well, I think it's this. The world is far more unpredictable than we like to believe. And those unexpected events, those black swans, they have the power to reshape everything.
It's like a wake-up call, right?
Right.
Forces us to question our assumptions about how much control we actually have.
Exactly. We can't live in a constant state of paranoia. But we also shouldn't pretend we have it all figured out. We need to embrace the fact that uncertainty is just a fundamental part of life.
Kind of reminds me of that time I tried to predict which way a coin would land using a complex algorithm. Turns out the coin wasn't impressed with my mathematical prowess.
Well, I think that's a perfect analogy for how we often approach complex systems, with a misplaced sense of certainty.
So if we can't predict these black swan events, what can we do? Is it all just a matter of luck?
Not necessarily. Taleb doesn't just point out the problem, he also offers some solutions. Remember the barbell strategy we talked about? Combining extreme risk with extreme safety. That's one way to prepare for a range of outcomes.
Right, it's like having a solid base camp, but also sending out a few explorers to see what's beyond the horizon.
And let's not forget the importance of staying curious. The more we learn, the more we expand our understanding of the world, and the better equipped we are to adapt to change.
Curiosity is like a superpower that helps us see those hidden connections and spot those potential black swans lurking in the shadows.
So listeners, as we wrap up our deep dive into the Black Swan, I want to leave you with this. We can't prevent Black Swan events from happening. They're a natural part of the ebb and flow of life.
But what we can do is change how we respond to them.
We can choose to view them as opportunities for growth and learning. We can build resilience into our lives and our systems, and we can cultivate a mindset of curiosity that allows us to navigate the unknown with a sense of wonder and possibility.
Well said. And on that note, folks, it's time for us to bid you farewell. We hope this Wealth of Words discussion has sparked some new ideas and maybe even challenged a few assumptions along the way.
Remember, the world is full of surprises, both good and bad. It's how we choose to embrace those surprises that truly shapes our journey.
So until next time, keep those minds sharp, those books open, and those ears tuned to Wealth of Words, where we'll continue to explore the most fascinating and thought-provoking ideas out there.
And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We love hearing your thoughts and feedback. Until then, happy reading.